Fenton.
Mr Chair, well, just for the record, I want to assure the opposition and the Minister that Labor does support this bill, because the work on this bill started under a Labor government, and I don't... No, Labor does support this bill, as does Phil Goff. He's very, very clear, and he made some excellent comments during his speech. And well, would you like us to withdraw our support for this bill? Is that what the members opposite would like? Would you like us to spend the next 12 calls criticising this bill? The reason we support it is because the work started under Labor, and we're also supporting the Act SOP, which puts back in place some things that were removed by this government. We support the government SOPs, and we've also introduced an excellent SOP to exempt council rate payments from GST. Mr Chair, what I'd say about this bill is it's kind of hopeful bill. It's hopeful because it hopes that droves of New Zealanders who've gone overseas to live in Australia, gone for a better life because they're not finding it here under this government, they're still moving to Australia by the plane load every week as they speak. This bill hopes that they're going to come home and bring their savings with them. Well, I have to ask the Minister and the opposite and the National Party, why would they? Why would they come back to Australia when their GST is going to increase on the 1st of October, when they're going to be paying more in rates, when this government has gutted all of the things, and particularly for retirees, where they've made it difficult, where they've cut support for hearing aid subsidies, they're cutting home health, they're cutting elder abuse education, they're cutting elder driver courses and allowing ever-increasing electricity bills. Why would they come back to Australia and bring their savings with them? You know, of course, there was a good idea behind this bill. Retirement savings portability is sensible. And we've been told there's potentially $16.6 billion in lost contributions from New Zealanders working in Australia and that under the scheme that could come back to New Zealand. We hope they come back to New Zealand. The government hopes they come back to New Zealand. But even if a fraction of that comes back to New Zealand, that would have a positive impact. But it is interesting, Mr Chair, that the government in the last couple of weeks has belatedly decided to do something about savings. Now, Kiwisaver is an excellent scheme. Kiwisaver is an excellent scheme, and the government has continued with it, even though it gutted it in its first budget when it came into government. It continued. It had to acknowledge that Michael Cullen and Helen Clark and the Labor government had an excellent idea with Kiwisaver, and it's been enormously popular. Over 1 million people have signed up to it. But this government's finally realised that there's a problem with savings and wants to do something about it. Even though, as I say, they support the Kiwisaver Fund or the Kiwisaver program, they have, of course, attacked the Cullen Fund. They've stopped the contributions, and, of course, in typical government fashion, they've made no decisions. That nice Mr Key saying, oh, well, we're going to have a committee and we'll start with a blank sheet. Well, it sounds a little bit like the National Party plan for the economy to me, a blank sheet. They've set up a panel of experts who may or may not report back before the next election. As other speakers have said, when this government has no ideas, it says it will form a committee. It forms a committee. We have so many committees, review groups and so on. And I do wonder if that committee, one of the first recommendations it will make will be to recommend reversing the stupid decisions around the Cullen Fund, around suspending contributions to the Cullen Fund, and putting back the holes that they created in the Kiwisaver scheme, the national government created in the Kiwisaver scheme when they first came into power. Let's just think back a little bit, Mr Chair, about what the government actually did to the Kiwisaver scheme in their first budget before Christmas 2008 under urgency. The minimum member contribution rate was reduced from 4% to 2%, and 2% became the default contribution rate for new employee members from the 1st of April 2009. And then, of course, compulsory employer contributions were capped at 2% as well. And so, we've talked a lot about Australia, as we inevitably do, because the government has no plan for catching up with Australia, and we're drifting further and further behind. And I can't help but reflect that the Australians got it right a long time ago. They were smart. They got it right. They got together with the unions and workers in New Zealand that they brought in compulsory super. They did. It's right. They brought in super, compulsory super. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Stuart.